Hi friends. And welcome back to the Wolf Recaps. Today I'm going to explain a movie called Cold Skin released in the year 2018. The movie starts with our main character who is a young Englishman. The movie is set in 1914, and he is traveling to a remote island in the South Atlantic to work for 1 year as a weather observer. It seems as if he is trying to run away from some of the difficulties of his life and is in search of peace. They soon land on the island, which seems a bit creepy and under the weather. His luggage is then brought to the cabin. When he and the captain of the ship search for the previous weather observer, who is supposed to go back with them, he seems to be missing. And the only other inhabitant of the island is the caretaker of the crudely fortified lighthouse, Gruner. So, they both went to him. Gruner, who is sleeping fully naked, gets awake because of their presence and greets them both coldly. When they inquired about the previous weather observer, Gruner coldly informs them that the previous weather observer cannot return with the ship as he has died from typhus, possibly swimming in the sea, and there is no body of him to be found and taken back. Hearing about that, they come out of the lighthouse, and the captain suggests the newcomer to leave with him, but he refuses. After the departure of the captain, the unnamed man then sighs and blankly looks back to the sea, and tells himself that he has to spend the next 12 months on the island, embracing his loneliness and working on a job that will bore him down to the core. He then goes back to his cabin and sets it up to become more comfortable. He finds the diary of the previous meteorologist, which talks of strange creatures from the sea attacking. After going through the diary, sleep dawns upon him. He wakes up the next morning and explores the island, seeing strange rock circles on the beach. He then uses his binoculars to see what Gruner is up to. As usual, he is being his crazy self, walking around the watchtower fully naked. Suddenly he sees someone else, but when he looks again, no one is there. He ignores it, assuming it was a delusion. He returns to the cabin and begins to drink his tea, when he starts hearing thumping at his door, and soon realizes that he is beset at night by the creatures. He hides in the cellar and jabs one of the creatures, which looks through the floorboards, causing them to flee. The next day he goes to the lighthouse and calls Gruner to let him into the lighthouse, but to no avail. Then he returns and, in the cabin, among the luggage, he finds a gun. Determined to hold his ground, he fortifies the cabin. He fires at the animals as they approach at night. However, he eventually needs to start a fire because there are too many to handle. As a result, they run away, but the cabin is destroyed. The next day he observes Gruner leaving the lighthouse, and follows him down to the rocks, where he discovers a female sea creature. Gruner prevents him from shooting her and shows that she is tame. Gruner gives the man the name Friend, and he explains that she is like a dog and will not leave her master no matter how cruel he is. She licks Friend's wounded hand and it heals. Gruner accepts Friend's offer to share amenities and other supplies in exchange for permission to stay in the lighthouse. As Friend starts living with them, he starts noticing the behavior of the sea creature and wonders if the creatures keep coming for the lighthouse because they want to reclaim the female sea creature. However, Gruner disregards his concerns and explains to him that he has saved her because she was attacked by a fellow creature and was dying. He further tells him that they feed on humans and each other, so they are dangerous, and tells him to be ready to attack. More creatures attack that night, but Friend faints and Gruner becomes angry at his uselessness and tells him to do menial activities such as fetch water instead. The next night Gruner locks Friend outside on the balcony with his gun, leaving him to see if he can fend for himself against the creatures. In the morning Gruner discovers him covered in creature blood but alive. The two men settle into a routine. The creatures attack several nights and they are forced to constantly keep watch. Friend discovers Gruner has been having sex with the female creature, but avoids talking about this to Gruner to avoid any unnecessary discomfort. Friend grows to like the creature, and names her Anaris, while Gruner physically and sexually abuses her. Friend recalls why he came to the island, to find peace and nothingness. One night, the duo comes perilously close to being killed when they are overrun by creatures, locking themselves inside the lighthouse light room. Gruner is badly bitten on the foot as he flees upstairs. At dawn, the creatures leave for the sea. Anaris tends to Gruner's wounded foot. When Friend tries to signal a passing ship for rescue, Gruner prevents him from doing so, while Anaris tries to protect him, enraging Gruner. Friend then takes walking along the beach collecting whale bones and carving them. He shows one shaped like a boat to Anarus and she leads him to an abandoned boat on the beach. He tells Gruner about it, but Gruner says the boat is too small for an escape from the island. And that he knew it was there, remaining from when a Portuguese man had used it to escape a shipwreck, but had been killed by the creatures. He says the ship's cargo contained dynamite, but the only dynamite the Portuguese man had brought with him had been waterlogged. Friend shows interest in exploring the shipwreck, while Gruner does not. However, after seeing Friend swimming in a pool with Anarus, Gruner changes his mind due to jealousy, secretly hoping that Friend might die in the attempt. They use the boat to row out to the wreck and Friend dons an old diving suit to go down and search for the dynamite. While recovering some, he sees childlike versions of the creatures playing. Once they return, they discover that the recovered dynamite is dry enough to use. Friend and Gruner form a plan to lure as many sea creatures to the lighthouse before setting off dynamite, believing that the show of force will drive them off. Anarus is forced onto the balcony and made to sing to attract them. The creatures attack, but Gruner fails to set off the explosives, forcing Friend to run to the top of the lighthouse to reconnect the detonator. The resulting blast kills many of the creatures. Gruner sets off a secondary set of explosives closer to the lighthouse, knocking both Friend and himself unconscious. In the morning, Gruner finishes off the wounded and dying creatures that are lying on the beach with a bayonet. Friend believes the creatures are more civilized than Gruner makes them out to be after seeing one of the dead creatures wearing a necklace. Gruner, enraged, hurls it into the sea. He explains that he found Anarus' sea creature years ago as a baby trapped in a net and rescued her, believing that she owes him her life. The following night the creatures do not attack, and a great wailing sound comes from the sea which Friend takes to be morning. Anarus disappears. While Gruner sleeps, Friend discovers a photo of Gruner as a young man with a wife. Friend resumes walking along the beach and leaves a carved present for the creatures. He discovers a child creature investigating his present, and Anarus returns, appearing more confident and bold. They are interrupted by Gruner firing a gun. Friend tries to tell him that the creatures, more of whom have appeared behind Anarus, want a truce. Gruner commands Anarus to return to him, but she refuses, causing him to scream that no one leaves Gruner. He runs back to the lighthouse and shoots a flare at the child, striking him in the chest and killing him. Friend runs after Gruner as he continues to fire flares, and after a struggle throws him to the ground and stabs his leg. Gruner gains the upper hand and attempts to kill Friend with an axe. But Friend reveals that Gruner is the previous meteorologist and urges Gruner to stop, telling him that he is not a murderer. Gruner drops the axe and staggers outside to be killed by the sea creatures. The movie ends with the arrival of the next ship to replace Friend. The captain mistakes him for the lighthouse keeper Gruner, and Friend does not correct him. He maintains the role, contemplating that this is the peace he originally sought. That was all for the explanation. I hope you liked it. Please leave a like to help our channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your view on this movie. Thank you for watching.